Hi, I'm Dave from Windy Hill Woodturning, and I just wanted to create a quick little video on how us woodturners go about making the various items that we make and sell at various craft shows. So today I'm going to make a very small bowl, very popular size. So we're going to make it out of this tiny little piece of cherry. So this will be a small bowl, kind of like a candy dish, very popular size for us. This small size tends to sell very well. Like I said, it becomes a candy dish on someone's desk or in someone's home. To give you a better idea of how it's oriented from a tree, this much larger blank, which will become a bowl eventually, you can see the bark. The bark is running vertical. So a lot of people think that when we make bowls, we just cut a section off of a log and then hollow from the top to the bottom, and that's not correct. So this bowl, this bark piece, the tree's growing this way, vertical, this is the part that's going to be hollowed out. So this cherry blank that we're going to be turning, the grain is going vertical. So it's very, very difficult to cut in the end grain. That's why we don't just cut a piece of log off and hollow that bowl. We hollow it from the side grain because the side grain is easier to cut. So we'll mount that in just a second. I just wanted to show you a few other things. The pepper mills that I make and sell start life block of wood about this size, about 3 by 3 by 12. And that pepper mill, first step, becomes a cylinder, and then we have to drill it out, which is probably the least fun part of making a pepper mill. But this piece of walnut is on its way to becoming a finished pepper mill. So then, of course, when we're all done turning this to final shape, sand, finish, we have to install the mechanism. A block of wood like this, which just comes out of a typical board, this will become one of the many handled items that we make and sell. Pizza cutters, bottle openers, cheese knives, ice cream scoops, etc. The pens that we make and sell start life much smaller pieces of wood, and pens get drilled out all the way through because the ink has to go through, the ink cartridge has to fit through there, and they actually get a brass tube. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a brass tube glued in there that helps us press the pen parts into the two ends. So a lot of pens and some handles get made from materials other than wood. For example, a cast acrylic resin, when it's hardened, we can shape that on the lathe the same way as we do wood. There's a few other materials, but acrylics are probably the most common. So let me clear this stuff out of the way, and we will get started. So one of the most common misconceptions when I tell people when I meet them at a festival or at a show, hey, I turn wood, a lot of times people don't know what that is. You can think of turning as whittling or carving on steroids, because the only thing that this lathe does, is it spins the wood at high RPM. All of the shaping comes from the skill of the lathe operator, the skill of the craftsman, and we'll use a variety of different tools, gouges, scrapers, and there's chisels, and there's all kinds of other tools. So very much kind of like wood carving, except that the piece of wood is moving, it's rotating. So let me screw this on here, and we will quickly shape this bowl. And that's all the lathe does. The lathe holds the wood for us, it spins the wood for us, and it keeps it secure, hopefully, from flying off. Sometimes we have accidents and they fly off. We hope that doesn't happen. We bring up this is called the tailstock. The tailstock supports, provides some support. So now it's pinched between there, it really can't escape. The lathe is the oldest power tool in existence. Back in the day, if you were an apprentice to a lathe operator who was called a turner, there's one of those last names that were once occupations: turners, bakers, carpenters, millers, coopers. If you were an apprentice to a turner, you were probably over here pushing a pedal in a treadle lathe, or cranking, or pulling on a spring to get this to move. And you can look up videos of those ancient lathes on YouTube. There's plenty of them, and there's plenty of people reproducing those old pieces of equipment that are all wood. But so, like I said, the only thing the lathe does is it spins this, and because chips are going to be flying, I need a face shield. So let's get turning. First thing we're going to do is shape this. So if the cameraman might want to zoom in a little bit, we'll get this shaped out real quick. And just like that, if I stop it and you can see, just like that, all of those edges are gone. So now we have a round object, which is kind of what we wanted. And we will clean that up just a little bit with a few more passes. Okay, that's cleaned up. So what I'm going to do, just for the sake of, just to kind of make this a little bit shorter, I don't want this video to be going on forever. We're going to put a recess in the bottom of this blank. So I'm going to actually cut what's called a mortise, and that mortise will be sunken in, it'll be recessed into the bottom of this little bowl. And that will enable my chuck, which you'll see in a few minutes, to expand in there and hold it when I flip this around to actually hollow out the inside of the bowl. So right now this is the bottom of the bowl. We just shaped the outside of the bowl real quick with the gouge. So now I need to take care of this recess. Whoops. Gotta move this down a little bit, probably help you see. Okay, so with the lathe stopped, you probably get a better idea of what's going on here. I do need to clean up the bottom here a little bit, make this a little bit more rounded, which I'll do. I'll probably have to come back to this and take care of this recess here in a little bit. But we're going to clean that up. It won't take very long. Okay. All right, so you can see the nice recess there. Just Just going to hit it again real quick just to try to clean that inside up a little bit nicer. Put a little bit more fluid on the edge. That edge is going to be dovetailed slightly so that it holds in my chuck real nice, and because I want it to look nice and finished, I'm going to use the spear point of this tool to put two nice little grooves in there. And we'll go bump, groove there, groove there. I think the grooves just give it a nice little finished touch. So now I'm going to clean up the exterior here of the bowl with a nice scraper. So I'm going to take a nice easy cut. You're going to see the shavings are going to be a lot different here. I'm also trying to maintain a concavity of the bottom. So what do I mean by concavity? By concavity, if I take a straight edge and put it across there, I want the inside rim to be lower than the outside. That way, as this object absorbs humidity during the year, especially the summer months, if I made that perfectly dead flat, when it absorbs humidity, it would wobble. If I leave it rest on the outside rim, then it'll never wobble no matter how much humidity it absorbs. Okay, so now I'm just going to clean up this outside, because if I give it a nice finish off my tool, I can save sanding. When you're a beginner, just like everything else, you can't get the spine of an edge, the spine of a finish, and a lot of beginners end up starting their sanding with like 60 grit, which is really, really coarse. You'll see in just a second when I start sanding, I'm going to start with 120 grit, which saves a little bit of time. And one thing that really helps that, these really fine little shavings are giving me really good surface. And I'd much rather do this with the scraper. I'd much rather do that with the scraper than sand. So I just have a little bit of tear out right there. It looks like this wood's not playing very nice. But right here, you probably can't see it on there because of the glare of the lights. But I will take that out right now. Pitching it up at 45 degrees. I don't know if you can see that. It's not laying flat. It's up on a side that helps me shear the wood fibers instead of just cutting them off. It's shearing them at an angle, which is giving me there. Now, still a little bit right there. Cherry can be very fussy. It's not my favorite wood to turn at all. And sometimes cherry, like the other fruit woods, has what they call pitch pockets. Well, sometimes those pitch pockets, they're just basically pitches sap. And if the sap dries out, particularly during the kiln drying process, it'll leave these little voids. But looks like I got all my tear out of there. So I got a pretty good surface there. So my outside is now completely shaped. And I chose this small bowl because it's a candy dish size. It's very popular for us to sell. But also, it's not going to take me very long for you to get the idea what the process is. If I used a big bowl, like a big popcorn bowl, the video would just be too long. So I'm trying to get this done efficiently. So now we're going to sand, take off my face shield, and we have 120 grit in here, and slower speed for sanding, and this will be sanded really quick. I'm going to go through 120, 180, and 240 grit. This will sand right through. The power sander, using the drill, makes short work of sanding, and I could sand it holding the paper in my hand, but what will happen with that is if I were to like fold up like sandpaper, like for example like a piece of sandpaper like this, if I fold it up and I just held, it's spinning so fast that it would build up a lot of heat and I would actually probably burn my fingers. Plus, I would put scratches in it because it's going in that one direction. With the drill spinning that way and then this spinning this way, you've got two different directions. It kind of gives like, if you've ever used like a random orbit sander, it kind of gives you a nice finish like that. So the 120 did a quick job there. Now what I'll do to prevent further scratches, as I switch to 180, the lathe is going to go in reverse. So now you can see the lathe is now spinning clockwise. So the wood is spinning clockwise now, and you get inside the recess. Pay attention to the transition point between the side and the bottom, and that's 180. And because it's just going to be a little bowl that's probably going to sell for in the neighborhood of 20 bucks, it doesn't need to go up through like 400 grit. It's just going to stop here at 240 grit. Normally, I would be wearing a respirator. I have a respirator helmet, and I would have dust collection going here, and I would have my air filtration going in the shop. But if I had all those things going for this part, you would not be able to hear me, and the dust collection would probably impede some of your vision as well. So we just went through 240, and that looks really good. Looks really good. So now the fun part, because no one likes to sand, although sanding with the drill is a little bit fun. Now comes the nice part. I'll be right back, because now, before I flip it over, the outside of the bowl is going to get a coating of oil, food safe walnut oil. I'm not going to do the inside of the recess because I want my chuck to grab that. If I oiled the inside now, it would just make that a little bit tougher. So I'm going to stop, make sure I got every place in there. So now you can see the nice color of that cherry coming through. So I'll just fold over and try to take off the excess. So this is not the same walnut oil you buy in the supermarket. This has been chemically altered so that it does not go rancid, and it is made specifically as a wood finish. And it's made by a gentleman by the name of Mike Mahoney. Mike Mahoney is a professional wood turner in California, and he markets these finishes for wood turners. So there we go. And next step is a nice little finish on top. Is a little bit of Mahoney's wax. This is a wax blend. Give a nice finish. Seals in the oil, and these are all food safe. So you can eat ice cream right out of this bowl. In our household, our kids and my wife, we have tons of wooden bowls. We use them for ice cream. We use them for snacks. We use them for popcorn. We use them for cereal sometimes. Nothing wrong as long as you take care of it. Don't ever submerge a wooden bowl in water. Hand wash it, but don't submerge it. Don't ever put it in the dishwasher. That would ruin it. So I get this wax pushed in everywhere. Now we'll spin it on, and the heat from the rotation is going to cure that wax. It's going to allow me to buff it in really good, and the wax is going to seal that a little bit, give it a nice sheen. The wax won't last forever, but it's going to last for a while. So really the steward of a wooden utensil is the owner. I only put the first finish on it. It's up to the owner to take care of it for the life of the item. So now that outside is finished, and we're ready to turn this around. And what we'll do is I'll have to grab it, lock the spindle, and then once I get going, I can reverse it, and boom, it comes right off the screw chuck. So here's what it looks like. You can see the side. It's not a bowl yet. We haven't hollowed anything out. All we did was shape the outside. There's a little bit of dust in my grooves there. We'll take care of that later. But it's finished. It's ready to be turned around, and we're ready to hollow. On my bigger bowls, that would be much more expensive, much more time consuming, like a big popcorn bowl, I wouldn't use a recess. I have actually a device right above my head called a vacuum chuck, which actually puts a vacuum through the spindle into a special chuck that sucks the bowl right up close to it, so that I can take off a tenon. So instead of cutting a recess, I leave a piece out, and then I have to flip it a third time to take that off. But for these small bowls, because I want to keep the price down, I have to keep the labor down as well. So I do it this way to keep the price down. Okay, this is a 4-jaw chuck. Very similar to the idea that came from a machinist lathe. And what we will do is, if you see that chuck, this key, those 4 jaws just move in and out together. So we're going to take that recess, and I'm going to expand those jaws right into that recess, right into that mortise. And I can't reef on it too hard because I don't want to crack the wood. I just want to snug it just to make it so it's not going to wobble, and it should run very true because the center, we've maintained concentricity from the front to the back, or actually from the top to the bottom of the bowl. Concentricity is important. So on a bigger bowl, I would bring the tailstock in for support, but because it's the tailstock here, this is so small, the tailstock would just get in the way. So now I'm going to take my gouge, special bowl gouge, and I'm going to begin hollowing. So I kind of cheated a little bit. If you notice, there's a hole in it. That hole was there for the screw chuck for when we did the outside of the bowl. But that screw chuck, that drilled hole is telling me my depth. So I know that when I get for this thickness sized bowl, I know that when that hole disappears, I need to stop going down. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a funnel instead of a bowl. Lock that in. That'll... Okay, so I'm pretty much down to there, and you notice it was kind of chattering a little bit at the bottom. That's because of this angle on the gouge and the heel. The bowl is so small, it's curving in tighter than what this angle is. So I'm just going to take one more pass here I'm going to angle my rim in just a little bit. I like my rims to angle toward the inside, and when I sand I'm going to have to hit this edge because that edge can get sharp. So and there I am pretty much at the bottom of that hole. So now I've kind of reached a limit for my gouge, so I have to go to a different tool called a scraper. Okay, so a nice little scraper edge up here on the rim, and now we're going to try to keep those one quick swing. And a little bit of a depression in the bottom. It should be gone by now. One quick swing up, and if I stop that and we take a little bit of a look at the inside of that bowl, here I'll move the tool rest away. We got a nice little bowl. I'm going to double check my depth, and the wood turning world is full of tools and gadgets. I just use a pencil. So I know where the middle is, I can see it. So I just kind of go, I line up the two rims as I'm looking down the edge here. I put my thumb right where the edges are, boom. That's how deep it is. I look at the top and I say, that's pretty good because I have a recess. That's probably 3/16 of an inch on the bottom. So I don't want to go any deeper. If I go any deeper, I'm going to risk going through and then we're going to make a funnel. And our goal is not to make a funnel. But I do see that although my depth is good, it's kind of getting pretty steep here. So I need to take basically this area here. I'll show you with the pencil. From here to here, that area needs to get out. So I have more of a vertical wall and not so much of like a tapered wall, because if I make that a little bit more vertical, if I make this wall thickness a little bit more consistent, because as I move my fingers down, it's getting really thick. So if I make the wall thinner, this little bowl will be able to hold a lot more stuff. We'll be able to open up the volume. Plus it will look nicer when someone looks at the inside. Alright, this big one's kind of getting to be a hindrance, so I'm just going to switch down to my shorter, the smaller one. You hear that chatter? That's because the tool's a lot smaller and I'm hanging over the edge. But there's a lot of physics here with this fulcrum, so I'm just going to move my tool rest in a little bit. It wasn't so much of a big deal with the bigger one, but this one's a lot smaller. Okay. There's always a little bump in the bottom in the middle. Just took that out of there. And I'm kind of liking where we're at here. I'm liking that a lot. Because of the recess in the bottom, I can't get a thin wall bowl. Plus this is so small, why would you want a thin wall? You want it to hold, you know, you want this to hold some M&Ms on your kitchen counter or something, or, you know, whatever. There is a little bit of tear out in here. which is common on, because I'm hitting end grain twice around. So there's end grain, if I hold it like this, there's end grain here and end grain. This is the way it would have been in a tree, vertical, because of the grain. So I'm getting some end grain tear out. So I'm just gonna up the speed and cut uphill, cut from the inside out. And one pass, one final pass uphill. And I can tell I'm doing good because when I see these fine little feathery shavings, which is a lot different than the gouge shavings, I can tell that I'm cutting very fine. Looks like it's pretty good. Anything in there I still feel will certainly come out in the sanding. So here we go again. We're going to sand. Same grits as the outside. Although I have to change my little sanding mandrel. This one's foam, so it moves, so it'll be able to contour the inside. The outside wasn't that big of a deal, but the inside is. So first thing, I'm going to hit the rim, hit this outside edge right there. Now I'm going to sand over here from 3 o'clock up to 1 o'clock. And that's all she takes. One of the biggest mistakes that beginner turners make is they sand too much. Sometimes they have to because they can't get a good finish off the tool, but they get going, especially with a drill, and they're like, oh, this is pretty cool, and they're sanding and sanding and sanding, and there's no reason because that's spinning, this is spinning, you're getting a lot of sanding done in a hurry. So now this is back to spinning counterclockwise. Or no, this is spinning clockwise now. I'm still going to sand over there, 3 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And the reason why, I'm going to hit the rim, the reason why I changed the direction of the sanding between grits is it's kind of like when you're mowing grass. If I sand the same direction, the wood fibers are all going to lay down and get sanded down that way, and then when they release, they're going to pop back up. When are they going to release? When I add the oil. It's kind of like when you're mowing your grass. If you mow your grass the same pattern every time, you know, by the middle of summer you see a distinct difference in the way your grass looks. So because you're always mowing it the same direction. And then when it stands up, it looks like, oh, I haven't mowed it in forever. So by alternating the direction, you can get it much smoother because the wood fibers are now being cut. They're being sanded in 2 different directions. So that inside looks really good now. It's smooth. I don't have a bump on the bottom. It's really good. I took the hard edge off of this outside rim. So we're done sanding. We're almost completely done with the bowl. Same finish as the inside. Food safe walnut oil. Okay. Give the outside another little bit just to take that sanding dust off. Use a clean part of the towel just to take off any excess, which I don't think there's really any excess coming off. Okay, now for the wax. Scoop out a little bit of wax. Don't need much, it's not that big of a bowl. I like to smear it in before it's spinning. That way I know it gets everywhere. And then even when I do my big bowls, I always give the outside another. Because the outside is what people see. That's what draws people in the booth. They see the outside of it. Oh, geez, look at that bowl. They see the outside. That's what you're going to see. You're not going to see the inside bottom because it's going to be full of M&Ms or hard candies or whatever you're going to put in there, or you know, whatever object you decide this thing should contain for you. I can always tell when another wood turner comes in the booth because the first thing they do, they turn it over and look at the bottom. How did this guy mount this? The average person doesn't care, but the other turners, they do. Not that it really matters, because on a bowl this size would be a little, to me, it's just a little foolish. It's overkill to flip it a third time to take off a 10. I'm happy with this recess. It keeps it quick, keeps it easy. That's all done. We're ready to take this off. We're ready to take this off. And guess what? Right here, completed bowl. So the only thing I have left to do here, which I'm not going to show you on camera because I think our battery life is running down, but there's a nice little cherry bowl. I need to oil the inside, but before I do that, I'll put my initials there with a burning pen, and then I'll oil the inside. Okay, so nice little cherry bowl, all done. Look forward to seeing you at a craft show, and that's how us wood turners, especially here at Windy Hill Woodturning, reach out to us, windyhillwoodturning.com. Like our page on Facebook, Windy Hill Woodturning. My name's Dave. Hope to see you at a festival soon.